you guys today, how much longer will this united front of the players union stay united as bills pile up, as cars get repossessed, as they begin to get kicked out of their apartment complexes? How much longer until the 10th, 11th woman on the roster, the ones who make 80,000?
So here's what's got WNBA executives lying awake at night. The players union is showing this solid front right now. They got 97% backing for strike authorization, but dig deeper and you'll find a bomb waiting to explode. 2/3 of these players aren't part of Unrivaled. They're not collecting those fat $220,000 checks for 2 months of basketball. Instead, they're stuck at home watching their savings disappear while the superstars are raking it in.
Oh, this is an article by the Sports Business Journal. Talks between the WNBA and Players Association have stalled, and the union's, quote, upper hand at the bargaining table is slipping as soon as the players will be faced with the question of how long they can hold out, according to Adam Minter of Bloomberg News. It is a necessary but dispiriting thought, considering that the leverage was well earned.
Sports Business Journal dropped a report that should have the Players Association sweating bullets. They broke down exactly what's going down, and it looks ugly. The union's power is crumbling fast. Here's what everyone's missing about this whole mess. Caitlin Clark walked in, and boom, these players suddenly had real negotiating power for the first time ever. Crazy viewership numbers, packed stadiums, huge media contracts, but here's the catch, that power doesn't last forever. And right now, we're watching the countdown.
By well earned, we mean Caitlin Clark showed up and they suddenly had some leverage in their pocket. Publicly, the Players Association is presenting a united front, but the outward appearance masks a complex private reality. Many players can't afford to wait indefinitely. Unrivaled provides a lens for understanding the divide. This season, 54 top WNBA hoopers, about a third of the WNBA's active rosters in 2025, are participating in Unrivaled. For them, Unrivaled and its big paychecks of roughly $220,000 for an 8-week season are a nice cushion while negotiations.
Let's crunch some numbers real quick. This year, 54 elite WNBA players. That's roughly 1/3 of all active rosters are getting paid through Unrivaled. Each one's pulling in around $220,000 for just 8 weeks of work. Pretty sweet financial buffer when talks get messy. But what about everyone else? Those other 100 players making basic $80,000 salaries, the supporting cast, the bench riders, the women fighting for spots. 11 and 12 on rosters. No endorsement money, no unrivaled paychecks. These are the ones who'll crack under money stress first.
AKA, they're going to dry up on their savings. AKA, they're going to need money. AKA, they got bills. A WNBA lockout or strike also poses economical risks for the WNBA. The league is in a much stronger financial position than its players to withstand a protracted delay or cancellation. Well, no shit. Pardon my language. Duh. Now, Natasha Cloud actually spoke about this before, and we've talked about this, that the players in Unrivaled, they don't really care about the other 100 players in the league.
This gets wild when you think about it. Natasha Cloud actually spilled the tea on this whole situation earlier. The unrivaled players, and we need to be real here, don't actually lose sleep over those other 100 women in the league. Lockout happens, no problem for them. They'll just stretch out the unrivaled season, pocket more cash, keep hooping, life stays comfortable. But those role players, they're staring down a totally different nightmare. Bills keep coming, car notes are due, rent checks start bouncing. Eventually that 97% solidarity starts falling apart.
They just want to get paid all the money that they feel that they missed during the NIL era. That's what a lot of this is, along with ego. A lot of this is players that missed the NIL era, sees Caitlin Clark. They don't want to admit it, but she's the dollar signs here. And they say, well, this is our only chance, really. This is our only chance that we're going to be able to cash in. Let's try our best.
Most of this boils down to pride and chances that slipped away. Tons of these veteran players completely missed out on the NIL explosion. They watched college kids start banking millions while they were grinding overseas for maybe 70 grand annually. Then Caitlin Clark arrives, and suddenly, real money starts flooding the league. This might be their shot, maybe their only shot, to finally get paid. So they're going all in, demanding 30% of total revenue and a $10.5 million salary cap. Problem is, they might be pushing too hard.
Talking about WNBA could be weeks away from delaying season. Despite releasing the schedule earlier this week, the WNBA likely needs to agree to a CBA by February to start the season on time. The WNBA wants everybody to believe the 2026 season will tip off on May 8th. It asserted as much with an announcement of a 44-game slate and a statement that explained in part the move was to allow, quote, essential planning to begin. The reality of where collective bargaining agreement negotiations stands paint a different picture.
What the league just put on the table actually looks pretty solid. Top salary hits $1 million, climbing past $1.3 million, with revenue sharing built in. They're offering about 70% of actual profit across the whole contract. Salary cap kicks off at $5 million year one, then grows as the league makes more money. That's a huge jump from where things stand now. But the union wants more. They want it calculated from total revenue, not profit, which creates a massive gap that could drain hundreds of millions.
Come on, Brad. Maybe they'll get the point and send us something better. But remember, Breanna Stewart yesterday said, oh, they're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. How can you see the light at the end of the tunnel, you liar? Whatever. In that proposal, the union is seeking a 30% share of the league's gross revenue and a salary cap of $10.5 million. The league's latest proposal includes a max base salary of $1 million, which would increase to more than 1.3 with revenue share. The league's proposing roughly 70% of its net revenue over the span of the deal. The salary cap would be at $5 million in year one and would grow in tandem with the league's revenue.
Let's talk about what's really on the line here. Based on Annie Costabela's inside info, the WNBA might be just weeks from pushing back the season. Even though they dropped the schedule this week, 44 games starting May 8th. But what's happening behind the scenes tells a completely different story. As of January 23rd, the Players Union was still sitting around waiting for the league to respond to a proposal they sent almost a month earlier. Before Christmas break, they went dark through the holidays. 2 years of talks, and here we are, late January, with complete silence from the league.
Best case scenario for free agency would be early March, and that's if the ink dries on a new CBA by early February, giving the WNBA the rest of the month to plan and conduct an expansion draft. Multiple league sources believe the best case scenario would be early March, given the ink dries by early February. We are about 2 weeks away from early February. February's in 7 days. 8 days. 2 weeks, we're sitting what, February 5th, February 6th? They need to get a deal soon before we start pushing the schedule back.
This makes Breanna Stewart's recent comments pretty questionable. She claimed yesterday that they're finally seeing progress ahead. But how exactly do you spot progress when the league hasn't even acknowledged your proposal in 4 weeks? That's not moving forward. That's a complete standstill. Meanwhile, general managers are flying blind about expansion draft rules. Toronto Tempo and Portland Fire need to figure out how to build their teams. But they can't make any moves without a finalized CBA. The core designation Think NBA franchise tag is getting hammered out in these talks. And that decision could totally reshape which players become available in the expansion draft.
However, in the middle of free agency, front offices will also be preparing for the 2026 WNBA draft, currently held April 13th. The league has never lost games to a work stoppage in its 29-year history. The next 2 weeks will be an indicator of whether its 30th season will be the first time it does. If the deal doesn't get done soon, might not be a lockout, there might not be a strike, but at the bare minimum, they're going to need to delay the season or start chopping some games off. Instead of a 44 game, it'll be a 38 game. They missed the first 6 games because they push it back 2 weeks. They mixed the first 10 games because they push it back a month.
Multiple sources inside the league think free agency might kick off in early March. If everything breaks right, but that only works if they get a new CBA signed by early February. We're 7 days from February. That leaves maybe 2 weeks to hammer out a deal, get all the legal language finalized, and get signatures on paper. Then they'd need the rest of February to organize and run an expansion draft. Normal years see free agency starting early January with big signings wrapped up by early February. We're way behind schedule. Training camp is set for April 19th. The draft happens April 13th. Everything's getting jammed up.
Earlier, how much longer will that 97% of players that agreed with the strike dwindles to 90%, dwindles to 80%, dwindles to 65%? Might not be able to vote again. I doubt they can vote on that again. But the rumblings and the talk behind the scene, it'll get back to them. And they'll say, damn, we're not really united anymore. These girls fractured and they don't agree with it anymore. And they're kind of starving and they need to pay for this and she needs to pay for that. And let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Appreciate it.
Thanks for sticking with me on this. So, here's the real situation brewing. Even if they avoid a complete lockout or strike, they're definitely looking at season delays or cutting games at minimum. Instead of 44 games, maybe it shrinks to 38, because they lose the first 6 games, pushing everything back 2 weeks. Or maybe 34 games if they delay a full month. This league has never lost games to labor disputes in 29 years of existence. These next 2 weeks decide whether season 30 becomes the first exception, which brings us back to the core question: how long before that unity crumbles? Right now it's sitting at 97%, but what happens when it drops to 90%, then 80%? They probably can't call another strike vote, but the whispers behind the scenes will reach leadership. The stars will figure out their leverage is vanishing because half the league doesn't back the plan anymore. Think about where this puts those role players. They're being told to sacrifice their financial stability so Breanna Stewart and Nneka Ogwumike can fight for maximum salaries they'll never touch. The new deal could boost base salaries from $80,000 to $250,000. That's life-changing money for the 12th woman on a roster. But only if there's actually a season happening. Strike or lockout means that money vanishes. Their rent doesn't vanish. Car payments don't vanish. Student loans don't vanish. The unrivaled crew can afford to sit and wait. They're making more in 8 weeks than most WNBA players see in a full year. They can stretch their season, keep cashing checks, and treat this whole mess like a minor headache. But for everyone else, this is how they survive. This is how bills get paid. Eventually, they're going to look at Breanna Stewart and Aja Wilson and Sabrina Ionescu and realize you don't really care about us. You care about maxing out your own paychecks. What makes this extra frustrating is the league's offer is actually solid. Not perfect, but solid. $1 million maximum salary represents a massive jump from current pay. 70% of actual profit is substantial money. Salary cap growing with league success means players benefit directly when the WNBA thrives. But the union is digging in for 30% of total revenue, which changes the math completely. Total revenue doesn't subtract operating costs, league expenses, or growth investments. They're asking for a slice of money before the league even covers its bills. The NBA gives players roughly 50% of basketball-related income, but that's BWAR, not total revenue. It's a negotiated formula that cuts out certain costs and expenses. WNBA players want 30% of gross, which when you break down the different calculations is actually more aggressive than the NBA's 50% BWAR ideal. And they're making this demand while the league still loses money, still gets propped up by NBA subsidies, still trying to reach financial independence. Look, I get why players are frustrated. They've been underpaid for decades. They watched the NBA generate billions while they scraped by. They had to play overseas just to earn decent money. I understand that completely. But there's a gap between fighting for fair pay and overplaying your position so badly you walk away empty-handed. Right now, the union is dancing dangerously close to that edge. Because here's what's real. Delay or cancel the season, and they lose all that momentum. Caitlin Clark's rookie impact was pure magic. The ratings, the crowds, the media buzz. That doesn't just pause and restart whenever you're ready. Fans move on. Casual watchers disappear. Sponsors get cold feet. The WNBA finally grabbed mainstream attention, and they're gambling it all over the gap between a solid deal and an amazing deal. The league has more power than most people realize. Sure, they need the players, but they can also afford to play the waiting game. They've got NBA backing. Deep pocket. They can survive a delayed season, or even a canceled season, better than players can survive no paychecks. And they know this reality. That's why they're ignoring the union's proposal for a month straight. They're waiting for pressure to mount, for cracks to appear, for those role players to start asking hard questions. And those questions are definitely coming. When the 10th woman on a roster can't cover her car payment, she's gonna wonder why she's sacrificing for Breanna Stewart's maximum contract. When the 11th woman gets hit with an eviction notice, she's gonna question whether this strike vote really helped her situation. When the 12th woman is eating cheap noodles for dinner because her bank account is empty, she's gonna realize unrivaled players aren't feeling any financial stress whatsoever. That's when the union's stance falls apart. Not because the league sweetened their offer, but because players can't afford to keep this fight going. That's exactly what the league is banking on. They're playing chess, thinking long-term, knowing time works in their favor, knowing financial pressure will eventually shatter the union's solidarity. It's ruthless, it's strategic, and it'll probably succeed. So the real question isn't whether players deserve bigger paychecks. They absolutely do. The question is whether they're willing to gamble everything they've already achieved by holding out for a deal that might not exist in reality. Because if this drags into March, into April, if games start getting canceled, or the season gets pushed back, they might look back and realize they had solid terms on the table, and let them slip away chasing something perfect. What's your take on how this plays out? Think those role players eventually crack? Does the union stay strong and force the league to cave? Or does this whole situation implode into a delayed season where everyone loses? Drop your thoughts below, smash that subscribe button, and tell me if you think I'm off base on any of this. Because one way or another, we're about to see just how united this players' union actually is when the money pressure really hits.